Hey guys, LevelCap here. Today we're doing a throwback video to Battlefield 3, and I think it's important to revisit some of the best games in a franchise from time to time to really see where the game was when it was at its height, in my opinion anyway. I think BF3 was the best that Battlefield ever got, and I like to come back to this game to see what we might have gained in the newer titles and also what we might have lost from time to time. I also like to try and remind myself or just test my memory and see if the game's actually as good as I always remembered it being. This is something that I find a lot of people do, myself included. You come back to a game that you thought was the best game you ever played, and it's like 3 years later or 4 years later, and it's a bit dated, and you're like, huh, well, I'm sure this was really good for its time, but it just doesn't hold up by today's standards. And BF3 was released over 3 years ago, and coming back into it, it's pretty easy to see the comparison in graphical fidelity. It's not a huge jump forward to, say, Battlefield 4 or Hardline, but you will notice just a lot of the shaders and lighting quality has improved pretty significantly in the newer games. The soldier animations and weapon sounds have also improved, but with a lot of these cool improvements, I would say they also take away from some of the core game mechanics that I liked the most from BF3, and I fear that we may never get back again. Something that the newer Battlefield games has really become well known for is the sound engine, the audio design, the weapon sounds, the environmental sounds are all top notch, and few games can compete with the Battlefield franchise on this front. What's happened in Battlefield 4 is they've taken it to a new level, but they've added in so many more sounds to the environment and the combat scenes, and added in lots and lots of background gun sounds, and like there's a battle going on outside of the map that you're in already. And this is cool. It definitely puts you in the element, if you will, but it also makes it much harder to hear what's going on around you. And this was one of the big things that I noticed when upgrading from Battlefield 3 to Battlefield 4 for the first time, is I found it so much more difficult to locate my enemies using audio. So on one hand, you gain a very cinematic experience from adding in all these crazy new combat sounds, and on the other hand, you actually lose a lot of your audio positioning and your ability to be tactical in a game, because believe it or not, shooters rely on sound positioning so much more than, I would say, just about anything else in terms of locating your enemy. Now, of course, I had to jump back into some team deathmatch because it's so well designed in Battlefield 3. The maps are really set up for it, and that's another thing that I notice a big difference between Battlefield 3 and BF4. In Battlefield 3, the maps were designed from the ground up by level designers, and then artists came in to make them more cinematic. In Battlefield 4, this process was changed completely. They had the artists come in and make very cinematic looking maps, and then the level designers would come in and try and make them tactical and play out well. So they reversed the process, putting visuals over gameplay for BF4 and the other way around for Battlefield 3. And you'll definitely notice this in your ability to be tactical and move around the maps tactically when comparing BF3 to BF4. And literally, when I hop back into the game, I went on a 14 kill streak with my first life in the server, and this is something that occasionally I'll do in Battlefield 4, but very, very rarely in Team Deathmatch, almost never. But I can do it all the time in, say, BF3 because I have the ability to move around the map and think tactically and not expose myself to dangerous situations when I don't want to. Battlefield 4 is far more chaotic, people spawning behind you, not being able to move around the map in a way that makes sense, exposing yourself to tons and tons of fire angles, and it's just really apparent for somebody who's put hundreds of hours into both games to be able to notice the difference of your tactical options when playing any game mode, really. Now, because BF3 has been out for so long, the player base is pretty diverse. People are playing from all over the world in the same server, so I see a pretty high fluctuation in pings that I'm playing with. The server I was playing in, we're having multiple players with 300 plus ping in here, and not once did I get a kill or death that seemed laggy or like after the fact, or did I even get any kill trades, at least not with like shooting back and forth at each other. Maybe a grenade that I threw and then got shot, killed the person who killed me, if you want to call that a kill trade. But in terms of the BS laggy kills you get all the time in Hardline and BF4, I really didn't notice any of that stuff going on, which again kind of blows my mind because they've been working on the netcode in BF4 forever. People are saying it's better than ever, yet if you play a game of Battlefield 4 and then switch over to Battlefield 3, you will notice a huge difference in just how much more responsive and reactive the multiplayer feels. And who knows, maybe it's much more related to the user interface making it feel more responsive and the hit confirmation sounds being more responsive. I never got any hit markers that pointed me in the wrong direction while playing Battlefield 3, and I get that all the time in Battlefield 4. And I also hear every bullet that impacts me in Battlefield 3, whereas BF4 you can get sprayed down by like 5 or 6 shots and you'll hear like maybe one of them hit you, or sometimes you won't hear any bullet impacts on your own soldier. A lot of these weird little UI potential bugs and sound bugs could definitely lead to making it feel like the multiplayer is being buggy or the netcode is buggy, where it's actually more of a UI bug or sound bug contributing to the overall feeling of sluggishness. Now check out these clips I recorded in Hardline the other day. My ping in this server was excellent and a lot of my victims had good pings because I was checking after most of the kills, and look how delayed these kill confirmations are to actually firing the shots. It's ridiculous. Now to be fair, this doesn't happen all the time, but it happens a lot more frequently in this game than I ever remember it happening in Battlefield 3. Now to be perfectly fair, there's still a lot of great improvements that I haven't even mentioned yet that we got in Battlefield 4 and Hardline. Fair Fight on the PC is an amazing addition. Obviously hacking is a pretty big issue on PC, and Fair Fight's a great stat tracking system that can ban people without even having to recognize what kind of hacking program they're using. Just looks at their stats and say that's an impossible stat, or that's an impossible score per minute to get in this game mode, or you've been getting way too many headshots, and it just bans you from the game. And that's really cool. And they've also done great work with gun recoil in Battlefield 4. BF3 still has this weird effect where it tries to recenter your gun after you're done shooting, and it's really annoying. Battlefield 4 got away with that. The recoil seems to function much more logically in BF4. The suppression effects make so much more sense in the modern games. The sun effect has been toned down. Things aren't washed out anymore. Vehicle physics are way better than they used to be. There's still a few bugs here and there, but compared to BF3, driving tanks and jeeps around is so much easier, and it just works better. It looks more legitimate, and you can have good looking vehicle collisions that don't get all lagged out and glitchy. So I mean, there's been huge improvements to other aspects of the game, but the just sort of the infantry combat aspect of it is one that I would have to absolutely disagree that got better from Battlefield 3 to BF4. Even if you like the newer damage model in Battlefield 4, it still feels kind of buggy and glitchy, and they mostly implemented that damage model because for whatever reason online play just wasn't as smooth as it was in Battlefield 4, and they tried to fix it by changing the damage model overall. I mean, sure, there was a few other reasons to change the damage model, but I think the primary motivator was just the fact that there's a lot of instant kills and a lot of weird wonky shit going on. Now, I'll admit it, this did turn into a little bit of a rant video bashing Battlefield 4, and granted, it is still a great game, especially for the price that it's at now. Holy crap, do you get a lot of multiplayer content. There's no arguing around that. I'm not saying Battlefield 4 is a bad game by any means. It's just compared to some of the aspects of BF3, it's like, man, did we lose a lot in the upgrade process, and I just don't know if we'll ever get it back again, and that's really kind of depressing to think about. And it does make you wonder about games like, say, Call of Duty and Counter-Strike that haven't really changed up their player physics and their gun models or their gun damage models for a long time. They've kept it all stock. Once they got their formula working well, they didn't change it, and a lot of people criticize them for not being innovative, but I don't know, maybe they're actually onto something. Maybe they decided once they got a working formula, don't change it. I don't know if that's the right option for Battlefield. I always appreciate game companies that are looking to innovate and improve upon what they already have, but I have to say things have gone downhill in terms of the infantry combat. As always, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap signing off.